Welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about GP. So as best practice, we want to maximize the GP that we achieve through our sales. So as you can see here on the store summary dashboard, the GP for this was 26.7, and we're actually down 7% from last year. So in SmartRetail, there's a number of ways we can actually address this. So if you're looking at the sales mix, 72% of the sales for this store is actually at normal price. So what we want to do is we want to maximize the normal GP for items that are active and that we are selling. So the first step to do this is to open up our hierarchy. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have the correct GP exception rule for each level of our hierarchy. So if you expand general settings and we look at GP exception, you can see here that my global rule is a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 60. But we all know that we can't achieve 60% across our store. So what we can do is we can expand into our departmental hierarchy and actually override the GP minimum and maximum rules for each level of the hierarchy. So for example, in grocery, I want to make at least 15. And in tobacco, for example, you always make a lot less, so minimum's 3. So you can address those levels in each level. Remember, after you make a change to each of the levels, you do need to hit save. So now with our hierarchy GP exception rules set, we can open up item maintenance. And as you can see, I've applied a column layout that includes my normal GP. I won't go into configuring the column layouts, but I'll put a link in the video on actually how to use the smart grids. But you'll find the normal GP and the normal cell and the normal cost in the column chooser. So now with those items on those columns on the grid, we can actually apply a filter. So let's find those items that we're selling that do not fall inside our GP exception. So our sales are affected by our active products. So let's only filter by active. Let's also filter only on products that we're actually selling. Because even if they're active, you're not selling them, they're not affecting your overall GP. And the filter we use to work out our GP exception is if we look at a normal GP, and what we need to do is we need to say where the normal GP is not between. Now we could just type in a value here, but if you hit the drop down arrow and choose the column, you can actually select a column to compare against. So minimum GP, column, and maximum GP. Now we can drill into a specific department or a different specific section. So let's just look at our fruit and veg products for now. Section is any of fresh, and maybe we'll include tobacco as well. Now if you run stock control, you can also add columns like QOH is greater than 0. So these are the items that we have stock of. And then when you're ready with your filter, we hit apply. So these are the active products within my store that I'm not achieving my GP exception. Now, if we just choose to sort by the normal GP, you can see there's a number of products here that are outside our GP exception. So sales of these products specifically are going to be the ones that are going to contribute to the lower GP in your dashboards and in your department sales reports. So we want to fix these. A couple of ways you can fix them. Traditionally, you can just open up the item and make the change to the normal cell. A quicker way though is while you have this price book mode turned on, we have the pencil here, so you can hit the pencil. And this opens up this grid into a editing mode. And here you can see from here, I can directly update the cell or the cost depending on what needs to be changed. And you can see that the GP updates. It does also replicate across other items in the family. And we do have the option as well, if you want to, we can also deactivate products if we're no longer selling them. So after you've addressed all your GP exceptions, we hit save and continue. So fixing these products once off is not best practice. We need to continually review this, either weekly or monthly or however frequently you want, but knowing that when you sell something that's outside the GP exception, it will reduce your overall GP. So it's best to do this process weekly. So instead of having to come in here and apply this filter each time, we can also save it as a filter. So if you click the filter button, we'll save it and we'll call it my fresh and tobacco exception. So now whenever you open up item maintenance, we can always bring that filter into effect to then make the changes that we need to. So we can also manage this by exception. So if there are no GP exceptions, there's nothing to do. And to be notified whether or not there are any GP exceptions, we can run a price book. And using our filter, we can bring that same filter that we applied in item maintenance to actually use as an input to our price book. So here we've got all of our items that are still outside our GP exception that match our filter. And you can then print that report. So to manage by exception, what we want to do is we want to save that as a favorite. And we'll call this fresh exceptions. And then what we can do is we can then choose to schedule this report. So if we open up our organized favorites, you can see there's my fresh exceptions. I'll choose to schedule it. And I want to email this report. So I'll email it to myself. I want to choose a standard report. And I'll give it a new subject called exceptions. And I'll set my format to be PDF. So I've configured how I want my report to be emailed to me. I'll press OK. Now I need to configure how frequently I want the report emailed to me. So if I hit this little gear here, I can say email this to myself daily or weekly. It's really up to you, but let's just choose weekly. We'll start today. And I want to email it at 5 a.m. every time I walk in on a Tuesday. Save. Once the frequency is set, we can then activate it and then save and close. So now what's going to happen is every Tuesday morning at 5 a.m., it's going to run this report. And if there are any GP exceptions, it's going to email you. That's an important point to make. With the email report scheduled, now SmartRetail will email you if there are GP exceptions. And if there's no GP exceptions, you won't get a report. This means you only need to action something if you get an email. There's no need to manually check each week to see if there are GP exceptions.